The Ascent is one of the latest role-playing games in a somewhat crowded cyberpunk genre. Released in July of last year for the Xbox One, Series XS, and Windows, the title made the jump to PlayStation 4 and 5 in March 2022. With the first DLC having just arrived, it's high time to cover this stylish looter shooter from developer Neon Giant. Before we get to it, I just want to say that I had to record most of my voiceover using a different mic than normal, which is of noticeably worse quality. I've tried to clean it up, but I really do apologize for that. Secondly, gameplay footage was recorded using two different capture cards, so there is a bit of inconsistency with the video quality. Again, it's not ideal, and I hope not to run into these issues again. With that all said, on to the review. The Ascent takes place in a futuristic alien world known as Velis. A megacorporation named the Ascent Group controls most operations on the planet, and in order to maintain the bustling economy, they hire indentured servants from off-world with the promise of eventually finding riches and freedom. Known as indents, these corporate chattels are often tied to their contracts for the rest of their lives, slaving away for the establishment without ever achieving their assured dreams. One day, the Ascent Group suddenly collapses under mysterious circumstances, and Velis is thrown into utter chaos as rival corporations, violent gangs, and shadowy syndicates battle for control. As such, the contracts of all indents are made null and void, including your own, and compacts are made anew with these rival bands looking to add to their number. Newly released from the Ascent Group, the player is recruited by a covert operation named Y-Corp, and is tasked with uncovering the truth of the group's collapse, while also fighting for fame, fortune, and survival. There's potential for a good espionage story here, but the Ascent's plot really just serves as an excuse to get you out there killing more foes. To be frank, the plot in many of these types of games, from Diablo to Borderlands, is much the same, and I've always found it a bit difficult to get invested. The big problem here is how quickly it glosses over some of the more complex story points, usually leaving all but the most observant players a little confused. You have the option to ask specific questions of your quest givers in between missions, but that only goes so far when you don't have a firm grasp on the bigger picture. The world building is a little flimsy as well. You can pick up codex entries from datapads spread across the world. They are few and far between and don't give enough insight into some of Velis's inner workings. Your computerized companion named Aggie, Artificial General Intelligence, can offer some witty dialogue, much in the way Claptrap does in the Borderlands games, but it can be difficult following along with what they have to say. This is due in part to the sound being a bit unbalanced, leaving their speech drowned out by the thumping techno soundtrack and the boom of explosions. One can always adjust the sound levels, which is greatly appreciated, yet when the plot is so forgettable, I unfortunately believe many gamers won't be bothered to do so. There are subtitles, of course, which would help remedy this issue. They are located in the top left corner of the screen, away from the action, and I don't see many people risking death in order to read the throwaway banter of their companion in any game. The Ascent is surprisingly innovative in most other areas, however, wonderfully blending an open-world RPG structure with looter-shooter mechanics and thrilling twin-stick shooter combat. The world of Velis is a real treat to explore, but looking at it, you'd never believe that the game was made by a team of only 12 people. The attention to detail here is extraordinary, and it's truly stunning how detailed the environments look. Buildings are packed with furniture and small everyday items. Streets are littered with trash, debris, and the occasional dismembered body part of an eviscerated gang member. The several populated areas you explore are crammed with NPCs having conversations, conducting business, having meals, and generally going about their day. All of these little details compound to create a genuinely realistic world that can be as immersive as most first-person RPGs. The lighting effects are also incredibly impressive, employing appropriate lens flares and neon lights to make Velis fit right in with other games in the sci-fi genre. I will say that the bright colors in some instances is a little too harsh, which really caused some strain to my eyes when playing in a dim room. Still, the art direction here is breathtaking at every turn. As for the world itself, Veles is split across several maps with many districts within each one. There's usually at least one civilized, peaceful area in which you can do your shopping and take up quests, with other districts populated with enemies and various dungeons. The main quest will take you through most of these locations, but side missions will guide you to plenty more, and there are others still that exist only for your looting pleasure. Traversing this large world can be a bit of a slog at times. There's just so many foes that make you take pause in order to mow them down, and your player character already moves at a sluggish pace. The map system doesn't help make navigating much easier. The mini-map only displays objectives such as NPCs, enemies, chests, and doors, so by not seeing pathways, it's very easy to get turned around. Your map also doesn't have much range, only picking up things that are slightly off screen, which makes traveling long distances somewhat of a pain. You can bring up a much more detailed map through the pause menu, which does make it easier to plan a route in the urban environment. Still, maps often have layers to them, and unfortunately it's next to impossible to find elevators on either map. You also cannot set a waypoint to anything other than a quest, so if you want to nab a chest that's on the far side of the map, you need to continuously check the large map to ensure you're headed in the right direction. You can call for a short breadcrumb trail to guide you to objectives, and this is often very handy. A big frustration, though, comes from trying to navigate to many of your side missions. Too many of these had trails that guided me to a dead end, leaving me confused as to why I couldn't proceed. Turns out, many of these optional quests require you to advance the main story to actually complete, but the game never tells you this. So you accept a side quest, journey all the way to the waypoint, only to find out you can't complete the objective until you invest in the main plot some more. It's really frustrating, having wasted all of that time when just not having the quests be available until they can be completed would solve a lot of things. The Ascent does have a convenient fast travel system, in which you may use the subway train spread across the map, or call for a paid taxi that can pick you up from just about anywhere outdoors for a small fee. This isn't without its annoyances, however. You cannot move between the large maps, for one, which is a hassle. You'll need to reach a hub area located in each map in order to travel to a new one. Even then, maps are accessed sequentially, so if you want to go to the fourth area from the first, you'll need to go through 2 and 3 before you can get there. Lastly, when fast traveling to many locations, the spawn point is rarely in a convenient location. For instance, most of the spawn points in the hub areas are located far away from the entrances to other maps, so you'll still need to risk death and traverse a hostile area if you want to go someplace else. Combat is one area where the Ascent soars with flying colors. The twin-stick gunplay here is among the most satisfying I've had in either an RPG or an action title in a long time. For the uninitiated, twin-stick shooters originated with the 1982 arcade game Robotron 2084, which has served as inspiration for many other games including Smash TV, The Binding of Isaac, Enter the Gungeon, and Hotline Miami. The genre earned its name from having a 2-joystick control scheme, with one offering character movement and the other providing a full 360-degree range of motion for weaponry. Twin-stick games typically presented in an overhead view, making it easier to aim at foes, and as such are sometimes called top-down shooters. These aspects lend themselves to frenzied shootouts, where players are constantly strafing to avoid enemy fire while blasting away at relentless mobs of baddies hell-bent on seeing your demise. The Ascent switches some things up to create a unique experience in a tried and true genre. First, the camera is most always at an isometric angle, very much like Blizzard's Diablo series of games. It can make navigating the maps slightly more difficult, as well as add challenge to some of the more hectic gunfights, but helps to immediately alert the player that this is just as much an RPG adventure as it is a punishing shooter. Secondly, while you'll be facing off with tons of baddies in combat scenarios where the bullets and explosions fly like leaves in autumn, strafing will only get you so far. Instead, the Ascent introduces a crouching mechanic where players can duck behind most any obstacle to immediately take cover from projectiles coming their way. From there, gamers can hold the left trigger to aim higher, firing off shots from the safety of cover at the swarms of foes advancing on your location. Even outside of cover, you may aim higher to nail enemies in the head. This can stun them in their tracks for a brief moment, granting you precious breathing room, though accuracy is somewhat sacrificed when doing so. Enemies, of course, will utilize the same tactics, so you'll need to be constantly moving from cover to cover, taking out those in the open while working to flank others trying to hide in safety. There are even some shorter enemies mixed in with the normal and larger sized ones, which require you to step away from the confines of your makeshift shielding to land an accurate hit. All of this may make the Ascent sound like a grueling title, but it's really not all that difficult. This is largely due to death being inconsequential. When you die, you never lose gear, or experience, or even money, so the only thing lost is your time. Enemy levels also don't make that much of a difference in the Ascent, so challenging a bad guy that's several levels above your own is quite doable, and of course should you fail, there's really no harm done. Players will be picking up a lot of offensive tools to wipe Veles clean of bad guys too. Firearms consist of pistols that can hit with pinpoint precision, submachine guns that fire in wild bursts, shotguns that can obliterate nearby foes, miniguns that are perfect for burying large swarms of weaker enemies, and plenty more. Some weapons will also specialize in a certain ammo type, such as energy weapons that can quickly destroy robotic enemies, and ballistic ammunition that can lay waste to humans. Players can equip 2 weapons at a time, and quickly switch between the two at a touch of the button, so it's a great idea to have 2 weapons with different damage types to make the most out of various situations. You can always change your loadout in the pause menu should you encounter something you're not prepared for, even during combat. Characters can also equip 2 augmentation abilities in addition to their weaponry. Augments are like this game's version of magic spells and grant their users various abilities at the cost of energy points. Augments are truly some of the more inventive and enjoyable parts of the Ascent's combat, as they are just so varied in what they offer. Some may improve your weapon's damage output, or fire a powerful beam like something out of Dragon Ball, or call forth a companion droid to serve as a distraction. Putting enemies into stasis is one of my favorites, as it freezes them in place and lets you pack on the pain as much as possible for a limited time. Should they receive too much, they'll explode in a powerful blast, sending their innards about and damaging others nearby. Characters may also assign 1 tactical ability, which is an extremely powerful move that can be used after building up enough tactical charge by damaging foes. Low-grade tactical abilities include tossing a grenade to deliver area of attack damage, or having a shockwave knock foes backwards. Higher-end abilities are far more important, as they can be used to heal you and your entire party, or even summon a massive mech that can be piloted to provide swift punishment to all of those around. One final aspect of both combat and exploration is hacking. Hacking can be performed at any time and can let you apply penalties to an enemy's stats, as well as gain access to things such as locked doors or chests. For the most part, this is easy to understand, but I don't think its execution is as great as it could be. Hacking things can be fun. Enemies surrounding you can be quickly taken aback by a fast hack, and if you're quick enough, you can apply major penalties to enemies that try to hack into your own defenses. One thing I came to love is cracking into vending machines that I encountered. Using money at these can give you a burst of energy or health, but if your hacking ability is strong enough, you can make them empty their stock without spending a dime. Your hacking level isn't tied to a stat or ability, however, but to collectibles you must find whilst exploring. I wasn't aware of this early on and kept failing my hacks because I hadn't picked up any of these limited collectible items. For such an important part of the game, tying it to optional hidden items feels counterintuitive to the RPG format, and I would have really liked to have been able to craft a stronger hacker at the beginning by spending points in a certain stat tree. The Ascent is equal parts RPG as it is twin-stick shooter, though its quality as an RPG isn't quite as high as its action counterpart. One of the most important aspects of a role-playing game is creating the ideal avatar for you to inhabit. The game's character creator is sufficient. It allows you to choose from a variety of head and face models, a gender-based body type, a hairstyle, and change the colors accordingly. The game does let you change your appearance at any time by visiting a vendor called a grafter. What's also greatly appreciated is the Ascent lets you transmogrify your armor. That is, if you find something that you think looks good on you, you can save that appearance and inherit the stats of a different, presumably stronger piece of equipment. So many RPGs still to this day don't offer this option, and it's sorely missed when it's absent. I'm looking at you, Cyberpunk 2077. For a looter shooter though, the weapon variety just isn't up to snuff. Games like Diablo and Borderlands have near endless amounts of weaponry to find and equip, each with unique effects, stat boosts, and the like. Here, you will acquire about 40 different kinds of weapons, and while they all have their own distinct feel, it sadly isn't enough for those really craving a dungeon crawling experience. Every weapon you obtain can be upgraded to level 10 at the weaponsmith in exchange for items found in your travels. These upgrades remain consistent with all weapons of that single type. For example, should you level up the HMG-42 Dominator machine gun to level 8, then every version of that weapon you pick up will also be at that level. Should you later decide to sell all of your Dominators, when you pick up a new one, it will remain at the level you had it upgraded to. This lets players quickly amass an inventory of every available weapon, while being able to sell off all duplicates at the touch of a button. It's fast, convenient, and most appreciated. Armor is a bit more varied though, works in a similar fashion. You can equip items onto your head, legs, and torso, and many duplicates you get can quickly be sold. You cannot, unfortunately, upgrade them, which is why transmogrification is so important. Each piece of equipment offers protection against the 4 different damage types, as well as passive boosts to your character. I did find the menu showing your equipment stats to be a bit confusing at first, but it didn't take long for me to learn how to quickly measure new armor at a glance. Stat allocation isn't as good as it could be either. Assigning points to various stats is one of the key ways in crafting a unique character in an RPG, but in the Ascent, all characters eventually end up feeling the same. Upon leveling up, players are given 3 points to which they can assign to any 8 skills, and all skills can be upgraded to a level of 20. While each of these offer various bonuses to your character and affect the strength of many augmentations, only 2 really stand out to me as being necessary: weapon handling and vital signs. Weapon handling determines your reload and weapon swapping speed, while vital signs increase your overall health. Because you never run out of ammo in the Ascent, being able to reload in the blink of an eye makes every weapon you wield that much more powerful, and health, as you know, is paramount to your survival, so increasing both of these will make you an unstoppable force in no time. Other skills, while sounding good on paper, don't always make that much of a difference. Critical hit rate makes extra damage occur more frequently, though not enough to matter. Evasion determines the speed and distance you travel when dodging, though this is only really noticeable for a few levels or so. Balance negates negative status effects, which are rarely utilized by the enemy. Aiming supposedly makes the grouping of your shots tighter, but I recommend just setting the aim assist option in the menus to high. Body battery increases the amount of energy you have for augmentations, while tactical sense determines how much tactical charge you receive from damaging enemies. As such, I suggest leveling these up evenly after you've improved your handling and vitals. The Ascent does have multiplayer like so many other loot-focused games, and there is fun to be had when joining up to 3 friends or strangers and leisurely blasting away at everything that comes at you. The multiplayer experience is crippled though based on the game's structure. Characters don't have defined roles to play in battle due to the limitations on abilities, weaponry, and stat allocation. The restricted amount of items to collect also makes looting somewhat trivial. There's never really a chance of getting something better than what you already have, so dungeon crawling is really only done for experience points. The difficulty level also doesn't increase when more players join the adventure, so it becomes much easier when you have more teammates. Multiplayer does include cross-platform and cross-gen play between PC and Xbox, so there is that. PlayStation users are sadly stuck with only each other. There's also no form of PvP in the Ascent, so those wanting to challenge their friends will have to stick to besting them at killing the most enemies during excursions instead. The game's sound design is excellent. When the action turns up, you can really feel like you're in an actual war zone with the intense explosions, shrill screams of enemies dying, and the blaring of guns bursting with bullets. Composer Paul Blagzak, sorry if I mispronounced that, who has previously worked on the games Call of Juarez, Dead Island, and The Witcher, delivers a beautifully electronic score complete with dance club-like beats for battles and mystifying digital melodies for exploring the dystopian alien settlements. The soundtrack has a runtime of just under 2 hours, but this is cleverly disguised by adapting the appropriate music to what's happening on screen. The only real issue with sound is that it's not properly balanced, as I previously mentioned. Some tweaking in the menus can solve a lot of the problems, but many players probably won't even think to do this. Glitches in an indie title are pretty much expected, and while some have cited this to be a big issue with the Ascent, I didn't encounter too many that hampered my playing. I encountered on a couple of occasions an invisible wall, which was likely cover that hadn't completely been destroyed. Once that I can recall, I got stuck in the environment and had to quit to the main menu. I had the game fully crash on me twice, which would probably have been infuriating had I been in the middle of a quest, but both of these occurred while simply wandering around in one of the cities. The DualSense controller continues to be one of my favorite parts of the PS5, and the Ascent's developers make great use of the pad's unique features. The controller's speaker produces just the right amount of sound during combat to really enhance immersion. Most menu sounds are produced via the controller as well, which just feels appropriate. The complex rumble technology of the DualSense is used to great effect here. When in a raining environment, it can feel like someone is lightly tickling your palms, and during battle, the controller can shake with fierce aggression as bullets spew from your selected firearm. The PS5 has had some impressive loading times in most of its games, which is why the extended wait times in the Ascent are more annoying than usual. Moving to a new map can take upwards of 30 seconds, while fast traveling can be around half that. That's not a lot, but when games like Ghost of Tsushima load near instantaneously, it can be a tad frustrating. Players wanting to rush through the game can expect to complete the 12 story missions in roughly 15 hours or so. You'll be missing out on a lot though if you do, and a game length of about 25 hours is more reasonable for those wanting a fuller experience. To me, this just felt right, as the combat was starting to get repetitive by that point, and the game had stopped presenting anything really new. Those that really dig the gameplay, though, may find the Ascent a bit on the short side for an action RPG, which is understandable. Replay value is hindered for many of the same reasons that the multiplayer falls short, though the levels of enemies are increased to better match your own when starting a new game plus. Now I want to dive into the first DLC for the Ascent. Coming more than a year after its release, the Cyber Heist DLC is a new campaign that whisks players away to a new zone on the alien planet of Velis, which locals amusingly refer to as the Dark Playground. This new area is much less regulated than those already visited in the game, with cutthroat mercs and lawless gangs lurking behind every corner, and as such, players will need to keep on their toes if they hope to make it back in one piece. This additional story takes place directly after the events of the Ascent's main campaign. For those itching to dive into the new content, it can be a bit of a bummer, but it's more than necessary in both understanding the plot and having a high enough level to tackle these new challenges. To access the Cyber Heist content, simply go to your former employer Kira in Cluster 13, and she will assign you to your new mission. The plot in Cyber Heist is slightly better than that in the base game, if only because it's largely self-aware. Players are told that aspects of their mission are on a need-to-know basis. That is to say, players don't need to know anything other than a new MacGuffin needs acquiring and new bad guys need killing. This clears the way for character personalities to really shine, and gamers can focus on the action rather than getting bogged down with finer details. A nice addition to the story is an actual antagonist in the form of Zale, the head of security for the nefarious Malhorst Guild group. This cocky alien will taunt you via your comms throughout the adventure, which makes the inevitable encounter at the campaign's end all the more satisfying. It helps too that he's a formidable opponent, offering perhaps the greatest single challenge in the game to date. The hectic twin-stick shooting combat is back in force, though with some adjustments. The biggest addition is undoubtedly the inclusion of melee weapons. 3 new weapons are available to make close quarters combat more manageable: a heavy-hitting sledgehammer, a quick-slicing katana, and an all-purpose baseball bat. These may sound counterintuitive to the twin-stick combat, but Neon Giant has done well weaving these into the bullet-heavy genre. These 3 new tools of destruction can hit especially hard and make quick work of anyone foolish enough to get close by. It can be thrilling acting as a trained ninja, quickly dashing from cover to cover, cutting down every enemy with deft slashes and swings, while switching to your guns to pepper bullets into those who stay at a distance. Your melee weapons also have special combat abilities, which are utilized by pressing down on the left trigger. The Rock Crusher hammer can be slammed into the earth, sending a tremor to harm faraway foes, and players can spin around with the guillotine katana to slice and dice everyone in close range. The U+ baseball bat is the only weapon that can be obtained during the main game, though it is by far the weakest and least interesting of the 3. Its special move, which is simply a quick flail that can steal some health from whacked goons, is also pretty weak, so the bat overall is just much less appealing. In addition to melee weapons, you have 3 new pieces of armor, 1 for each slot, and 2 new firearms. This is quite a small amount for any kind of downloadable expansion. The new armor, while cool to look at and has some high stats, isn't really anything special, and better can be found in the main game. As for the 2 new firearms, the F&F Stinger missile launcher and the Violator assault rifle, both can deliver excessive damage to any of your foes. The Violator can fire a controlled stream of bullets, and if you land the killing blow, most enemies will balloon up and explode as they do in stasis. The Stinger launcher fires slow-moving missiles that will home in on nearby targets and set them ablaze with burning damage when they detonate. Upgraded, these firearms can be ideal for crowd control. I would have loved to see new tactical weapons and augmentations, as these were among the best aspects of the main game, but alas, there's nothing new in those categories here. That's a real shame, as the new melee-focused combat could be elevated even higher with fresh abilities that take that into consideration. Imagine an augment that more than doubles the reach of your handheld weaponry, or a tactical ability that draws foes towards you for a limited amount of time. The potential is there. Aside from the final boss, Zale, Cyber Heist doesn't include any new enemies to take on. This is a big letdown, as the base game was already lacking in enemy diversity as it was. Fortunately, the difficulty is cranked up a big degree. You'll be encountering baddies with levels increased all the way to level 35, and it's easy to be overwhelmed by the massive hordes of enemies of all types that come pouring out of the woodwork, or maybe cyberwork, when the bullets go flying. Switching things up between melee and range combat is increasingly important in maintaining control from increased enemy numbers. This new challenge also lends itself to multiplayer in a big way, where one player can rely on melee weaponry to defend the others blaring away with firearms. In short, the exciting gunplay is somehow made even better in this edition. The Dark Playground consists of a single, mid-sized map with many smaller districts within. There are a few secret areas to unearth, accessed through some hidden walls or concealed elevators, and finding these locations and robbing them of their loot is a nice treat. You have a small central hub that doubles as your safe zone. All shops are located in close proximity to one another, something that I wish was more common in the main game. It's easy to hit all the stores at once, then take the nearby elevator up to where the bad guys are, which saves a lot of time. Loading into the Dark Playground takes a bit longer than usual, which is understandable. Once there, fast traveling to any of the area's districts only takes a few seconds, so it's pleasing to not have to undergo the long taxi rides like in the main game. Many gamers will want to go into Cyber Heist with a crew of up to 4 members, and Neon Giant makes this easy as only the host player needs to own the DLC. Additions so often split the player base in multiplayer-focused games, and it's so refreshing to see that this won't be a problem here. Hopefully the developers maintain this amount of accessibility with future content. This additional campaign's length is especially disappointing. There are only 2, albeit lengthy, story missions and 3 side quests to undertake. As such, you'll only need around 3 hours to do just about everything that Cyber Heist has to offer. The new melee combat is immensely enjoyable, but for so few new items and even fewer new quests, the $9.99 US price tag makes it tough to recommend to those wanting a little more than just more of the Ascent gameplay. If you have a friend that already owns it, this can be a thrilling romp, but the one ponying up the dough may be left sorely wanting for more bang for their buck. As for the game overall, the Ascent mostly prevails with its exciting combat and truly injects a sense of newness to both the twin-stick shooter and RPG genre. It's not without some noticeable flaws, however, with a paltry amount of weapons compared to its contemporaries, as well as a skill system that isn't used to its full potential. Other areas are disappointing as well, with a ho-hum plot, unbalanced sound design, and clumsy navigation systems. Regardless, I fully recommend rising to the challenge the Ascent presents, as it remains one of the more memorable gaming experiences I've had in a long while. The combat is beyond thrilling, and that alone can provide hours on end of entertainment. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to my channel. Also, check out my social media accounts listed on the left to keep up to date with what new content is coming your way. Lastly, if you like my content and are in a position to do so, please consider donating to my Patreon. Every little bit aids me in creating more videos like this one, and I'm beyond appreciative for all the support. As always, thank you again, and take care, everyone.